you think about how Satya Nadella a few weeks ago was painting a picture of software as a service being dead, under quotation marks, what we have been doing in the last few weeks is pivoting what we are offering. So you might have heard of agents. So what we are trying to do is essentially taking our offerings that we have in the data and AI team and wrapping them around agents. And what we expect in the future is that these agents become micro functionalities that our SMEs and SMECs are using within their value chain, and there will be orchestrators of those agents that contributes to what currently is done by software as a service will be with AI agents. Yeah, so if you think about what Satya Nadella was saying about a few weeks ago, what we have been doing is pivoting our strategy in how we package our offerings to the SMC market. And what we're doing is essentially taking agents, AI agents, wrapping around our functionality that we are offering, that we have been offering, wrapping around in agents and providing that as a micro functionality for our customers. And they can integrate those agents as pieces of their value chain. And it will essentially replace what they're currently doing with software as a service. Microsoft has recently changed their strategy around how to package their functionality. So they are going with agents. They're wrapping around functionality that they're offering as was an API before, and they're using it now as agents. We're doing the same thing. We're taking our functionality that we offer to our customers, and we're wrapping them around agents. And those agents provide micro functionality to our customers, and we can orchestrate those agents. And once we can orchestrate these agents, they solve a problem for our customers the same way software as a service was doing before. So what we're doing is, again, when we look at those tools that are, of course, have been in the market for a long time already, we're adding specific functionality that is specific to our customers. So you can think about this as industry offerings that, again, when we talk about agents, you have an agent that is essentially trained on a specific data set of the customer on that specific problem. So when we look at generative AI over the last 2.5 years, the transition has been away from essentially what's called the RAG pattern to fine-tuning the model to the data of the customer. And this is something that Microsoft has been doing also in the last few months with their products. And we are doing this now with our customers with specific problems on their products as well. So we have been adding value differently than in the past. We are adding functionality to these products that is specific to the customer needs, in a sense that we are training AI agents for a specific problem of the customer. And the difference that we see to, let's say, 2.5 years ago when generative AI was really released to the wider public is that we are, instead of using what's called the RAG patterns, we are fine-tuning models now that solve customer problems on their customer data with a specific model.
Crayon, over the past number of months, have moved a number of EA customers over to CSP throughout the world. One of our key strategies in moving that, obviously, is working closely with the Microsoft sellers and the Microsoft counterparts. If you don't have that close alignment early on, you're always going to have disconnect. So that's one of the key strategies, having that initial alignment. And we're actually seeing that pay huge dividends. If you look at our trailing 12-month renewal of CSP, that is actually over 140%, which is way more than the EA renewal rate. That is one key strategy. Other key strategy, of course, is working with the customer. It only works for customers who want the flexibility of the CSP program. Understanding what the customer needs, understanding what's best for them, and having that collaboration with Microsoft, including the 5 MCAPS priorities, making sure that each customer has at least 2 of the available workshops around the area: security, Copilot, data and AI migrations. Moving SMC and E customers over to CSP from enterprise agreements has been one of the focus for Crayon. How do we do that? Well, we moved a number of customers, over a dozen in the past few months. And there's a number of different ways you can do that. One of the key strategies, and actually the most important strategy, is working with the Microsoft sellers and having our account manager and the Microsoft counterpart closely aligned. Of course, we also need to work with the customer and understand what their requirements are. The CSP is not always going to be the best option, but if it makes sense and it is something that they require because of flexibility, then absolutely. And actually, moving customers to CSP in the long run will have higher revenue and higher yield. If we look at the customers that we moved to EA, Moving SMC and E customers over to CSP can be done in a number of different ways. The strategy that Crayon has applied is across a number of different areas. First of all, we need to make sure that we are aligned with the Microsoft account manager, the counterpart who our rep is working with. Without having that alignment, Crayon has moved over a dozen customers from EA to CSP in the past few months. There's a number of ways companies can approach that. Crayon's strategy is focused on a number of key pillars. The first one of those is making sure that we have alignment with Microsoft. We require our Microsoft account manager and the counterpart to work together. Without that alignment, it's not going to be a good outcome. We also need to make sure that we're also looking at the customer's best interest. CSP is a flexible program and it's going to make sense for customers in certain scenarios. As part of that strategy, we also make sure that we build on the key priorities of both Microsoft and Crayon and ensuring that we have the 4 key areas of build intent workshops covered. At least 2 of those must be attached to each scenario when moving a customer from CSP to EA. Over the past number of months, Crayon has moved SMC and E customers from EA to CSP. It's not an easy motion, but we do have strategies in place to make sure that we get there. The fundamental strategy of that is making sure that we have alignment with Microsoft. It requires our account manager to be closely aligned with the Microsoft counterpart. It is a always-on account planning. They constantly need to know what they're doing and also having the customer involved in terms of understanding what they need. As part of the strategy, we also require 4 key priorities to be involved as part of discussion, and we need to land 2 of those. Out of the 4, you have Copilot, data and AI, migrations, and security. 2 of those always need to be attached for it to be a positive outcome. Having CSP is a flexible option, and it also allows you, because of the always-on account planning and always-on selling, to grow that account. If we look at Crayon's trailing 12 months of CSP renewals, it's actually over 140%, which is far higher than under enterprise agreements.
So Crayon is serving Microsoft on all kind of licensing motions. So we are an LSP where we cover together large enterprise, and we are also an indirect provider serving customers through our resellers and targeting the SMB business. So I have the pleasure to lead indirect business where we live and breathe SMB and CSP as a motion. So this is the foundation of our business strategy. What I love about CSP is that it's not really transactional conversation or licensing conversation. It's much more than that. It's about how we're going to help our customer transform through the digital transformation. So CSP is like an open framework where we can always make sure that we're going to find new and recurring business streams through the cross-sell and the upsell motions. And right now we are in the midst of the renewal season at Microsoft, and we see that we are doing extremely great with the CSP recapture rate by adding security conversation to existing install base. So maybe some context before we get into the question is that Crayon is a special partner to Microsoft. We serve all kinds of customers together through our LSP authorization to serve the large companies and public sector, and we also have the indirect provider authorization where we live through the SMB and the CSP motion. So I have the privilege to serve the SMB customers and the indirect motion. So it's 100% of what we do today and this foundation to our business strategy. What I like about CSP is that it's much more than a transactional or licensing conversation. It's about how we're going to help in time transform the customer into the digital transformation journey. So it's an open framework where we are looking at kind of new and recurring business streams through cross-sell and upsell opportunities. And we see it clearly right now with the renewal rate and recapture rate where we are adding security to any conversation we have with the SMB customers. I mean, security is clearly top of mind right now. So CSP is a fantastic mechanism where we basically can add our services, our managed services, our IP to Microsoft products. So it's how we're going to wrap our value around Microsoft technologies. So this is fundamental for us to go and scale our business. So when we look at Crayon, we are a services-led organization. So we have different centers of excellence where we build services and practices around data and AI, around security, around cloud infrastructure, and CSP allow us to scale these businesses with Microsoft. On top of that, I would say the second magical aspect of CSP is that it's a flexible construct. So we can be on the customer side always, which is the key DNA of Crayon, to make sure that we always meet the requirements and the needs of customers. So it's an open framework where we can have this upsell cross-sell conversation whenever it's going to make sense for customers. So the CSP framework is an open framework. It's made for partners to add the IP, the services to the Microsoft product, and we've wrapped that all together to be more compelling and relevant to the customers. So at Crayon, we have a big services component in everything we do. We are primarily an IT consultancy, so we have that center of excellence to deliver services around data and AI, around security, around cloud migration, and CSP is supporting all this. The second great thing and magical thing about CSP is that it's a very flexible mechanism. So with CSP, we are always on the customer side, where we can have the right conversation at the right time to have this upsell and cross-sell conversation whenever it meets the requirements and the needs of the customers.